On the very first route of your journey across the Hoenn region, you may encounter a small bird darting across the grass. It's a Taillow! But how do Taillow, and its evolution Swellow, interact with the ecosystem around them? Join me as I do a deep dive into the ecology of the Taillow line. If you've played through a Hoenn game, you probably got your starter, Mudkip if you're not a loser. Saved Professor Birch from the small dog attacking him, and as is tradition in most Pokemon games, went off into the woods to catch some bird, some bug, and some rat to start your journey with. Today, I'm here to talk about Taillow, the Route 1 bird we likely all had in our parties at some point, as well as the evolved form, Swellow. I'm going to talk about the real-world species that this Pokemon is inspired by, and how that translates to the moves it can learn, its nesting strategies, and its feeding habits. To start this off, let's talk about the real-world equivalent of a Taillow, the Barn Swallow. Now, I could talk to you all you want about how Taillow and the Barn Swallow have similar beak shape and wingspan and coloration and etc, etc. And I'm going to do that, don't get me wrong.
We're stuck now.
Or I could just show you pictures, because look at these two. I mean, they literally just saw this bird outside one day, copy-pasted it into Pokemon Ruby, and called it a day. And you know what? Sometimes that's all it takes. Hirundo rustica is a species of bird in the family Passeriformes and the family Hirundinidae. Being in the Passeriformes family means it's a songbird like the cardinal, the robin, or the goldfinch. In the games, this might translate to Taillow being able to learn moves like Echoed Voice, Boom Burst, or Mimic. The order Hirundinidae is made up of all different species of swallows, like our friend here. For identification, the barn swallow is black on the back of its wings and on its back. It can be white or brownish on the underside of its wings and on its belly, and it'll have red coloration around the face. The white-bellied variety is the one that looks the most like a Taillow, so that's the one we'll be covering today. Perhaps most distinctively, and setting it apart from other swallows, the barn swallow has a forked tail when in flight. And if you've paid attention for any of the video, that might seem familiar, as Taillow and Swellow both have extremely forked tails as well. According to legend, the barn swallow got its forked tail because, in a move straight up plagiarized from the story of Prometheus, it stole fire from the gods to bring to humans. Seeing this, an angry deity hurled a fireball at the bird, burning its middle tail feathers away. This legend might be referenced in the fact that Taillow and Swellow can both learn the move Sunny Day, and also in these Delta species Pokemon cards, in which Taillow and Swellow are both depicted as fire types. Taillow and Swellow can also learn the move Toxic. I don't have any explanation for this, and I just couldn't think of a better place to put it in the video, but I can't think of any reason why this random bird can learn Toxic. So, if you know, please leave a comment. Another similarity between Taillow and the barn swallow is the call. The call of the barn swallow is very similar to the cry when you encounter a Taillow, and as you might expect, the Swellow cry is just the Taillow one, but deeper. Young barn swallows will give this call when threatened or when predators appear too close to the nest. Hearing this will send adults diving at the threat and trying to drive it away. We can see this translates in the games because Swellow can learn the move Brave Bird, and also from the Emerald Pokedex entry, which states that a Swellow dives upon its prey from far above. Now, just like Taillow in Pokemon Ruby, the barn swallow is a very common bird. In fact, it's the most widely distributed species on the planet. Like many songbirds, it breeds in the northern hemisphere, then flies to the southern hemisphere when it starts to get a little bit too cold. This is in line with what we know from the Fire Red and Leaf Green Pokedex entries, which state that it dislikes cold seasons. It migrates to other lands in search of warmth, flying over 180 miles per day, as well as the Diamond and Pearl Pokedex, which states that it flies in search of warm climates. The next thing I want to talk about is speed. The barn swallow is known for its speed, being the fastest of all swallow species, and being able to reach speeds of up to 46 miles per hour. So now, the next time somebody asks you,
"What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?"
you'll know. This speed is translated very well in the games, with Taillow learning all of the staple bird Pokemon moves like Quick Attack and Double Team. In terms of speed, Taillow beats out almost every other Stage 1 bird Pokemon. Wait, I'm sorry. Wingull? You're telling me out of all of these Pokemon, Wingull is one of the top contenders for fastest Stage 1 bird Pokemon? This doofy little guy? Nah, bro. You gotta be kidding me! Doduo, a Pokemon known for its speed. No problem at all. Wattrel, a flying electric type. Two of the fastest types in the game. Easy dub for our boy Taillow. But Wingull is too much to handle. I should point out that Taillow is also tied or beaten for speed by Murkrow, Cramorant, Bombardier, and Flamigo. And don't get me wrong, these make me mad too, but not as much as Wingull. Next, let's talk about one of the most important factors of a creature's ecology, the diet. To get into this, we first need to talk about beak shape. When you're looking at birds in the real world, you can often tell what their diet mostly consists of based on the shape of their beaks. Like, for instance, you look at the beak of a hummingbird and you know it's not about to be chowing down on some prime rib. So, what shape of beak does the barn swallow have? Barn swallows and Taillow both have wide, flat beaks, meaning that they're insectivores, feeding mostly on bugs. In real life, the barn swallow's feeding grounds are primarily meadows, fields, farmyards, and open water. They are aerial foragers, often flying low just above the surface of the grass or water, catching as many bugs as they can in their wide beak. We know that Taillow has a similar diet based on the Sapphire Pokedex, which states, "This Pokemon feeds on Wurmple that live in the forest." I can just picture Taillow flying through the woods, picking Wurmple off trees at high speed. To see what else Taillow feeds on, we need to look at what else is nearby in the area where it lives. In the Hoenn region, where Taillow was first discovered, it can be found on routes 104, 115, 116, and in the Petalburg Woods. On Route 104, we already know that Taillow primarily feeds on Weedle from the Sapphire Pokedex, but it also probably preys on Sewaddle, which appear alongside Pidove and Chatot in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Taillow likely competes with other birds on the route like Chatot, Pidove, and Wingull. The situation is similar in Petalburg Woods, except that Taillow has no competition with any other bird Pokemon for food. It's free to hunt the local Weedle, Paras, or even a Cascoon or Silcoon if it's feeling particularly hungry. Jumping back to Route 116, things get a little bit harder. For the first time, we see Taillow on a route without Weedle, its favorite food source. While this may lead to a slight decrease in the Taillow population, with it being slightly rarer on Route 116, there are still plenty of bug Pokemon to feed on, such as Nincada, or even a Joltik if it's feeling particularly brave. As well on Route 116, Taillow only has one other bird Pokemon to compete with for food, Pidove, which it can easily outspeed when on the hunt. Route 115 is where things get really challenging. Not only are there no Weedle to be found, there's simply no bug Pokemon to be found in the first place. Not only that, but there are other flying-type Pokemon to contend with for food, such as Pidove, Swablu, and Wingull. So what does a Taillow do in this area, where there's not only stiff competition for food, but not much food to go around in the first place? Well, guess what else is found on Route 115? The now newly evolved Swellow. While still resembling a barn swallow, when Taillow evolves, it gains some attributes most commonly found in birds of prey, such as a much larger body, a longer beak, and also talons. This carnivore-like shift is reflected in the Ruby Pokedex, where it says, "Swellow flies high above our heads, making graceful arcs in the sky. This Pokemon dives at a steep angle as soon as it spots its prey. The hapless prey is tightly grasped by Swellow's clawed feet, preventing escape." To fuel its new and larger body, a diet of insects alone is likely not enough, so a Swellow will use its shiny new talons and its sharp new beak to hunt down larger species of prey, as well as the usual insects. On Route 115, the only route Taillow can be found on in the entire Hoenn region, it likely is near the top of the food chain, hunting down species like Magikarp to eat for itself, but also to feed to young Taillow. Now I know that I said before that beak shape usually indicates what type of food a species eats, but very, very rarely in the wild does a species only eat one type of food. Barn swallows, for instance, also sometimes eat berries, seeds, slugs, and even oyster shells, which add much needed calcium to their diet. So it's not out of the realm of possibility for them to eat a Magikarp which has been brought back by an older Swellow, which easily outpaces the competition on the route from other bird Pokemon. Speaking of outpacing the competition, let's talk about what happens when Taillow evolves. A massive increase in speed. Taillow jumps up from a very respectable speed stat of 85 all the way up to a whopping 125. Not only does it now easily outpace the vast majority of other bird Pokemon, it also can outpace its old rivals like Bombardier, Flamigo, Cramorant, and the newly evolved Honchkrow. It's also almost double the speed of the newly evolved Pelipper. The only rivals Swellow has in the speed department from other bird Pokemon are Kilowattrel, who ties with it, and Talonflame, who beats it by just the narrowest margin. Neither of these make me mad, because Kilowattrel is a flying electric type built for speed, and Talonflame is based on the Peregrine Falcon, which is literally the fastest animal in the world, but I'm getting ahead of myself. That's a topic for another video. To keep talking about location and ecological partners, let's go across the sea, all the way over to the Johto region. In Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Taillow is only able to be found in one place, Cherry Grove City. This tracks with the real world, because barn swallows, as their name implies, are known to make their nests in man-made structures like barns and houses. It's also a city right on the coastline, meaning Taillow likely migrate to the Johto region, then set up shop right in the first city they come across. In Cherry Grove City, Taillow likely spends its time hunting down Spinnerack, Ladybug, and the occasional Pineco, and it only really has to compete with the nocturnal Hoot for prey. In the Kalos region, Taillow can only be found along Route 8, the Morel Coast. Along this route are a lot of other Pokemon, but strangely no bugs. There's also no Swellow found on this route to catch food and bring back to the hungry Taillow. The population likely has to persist on broken shells from Cloyster, Clawitzer, and Binacle, as well as the occasional Skrelp unlucky enough to poke its head above the surface. This lack of food is probably why Taillow is so sparsely found on the route, only appearing 5% of the time and only specifically in horde encounters. They likely hunt in large groups, only getting enough food to barely sustain a small population. Now that we've finished talking about Taillow migration, let's move on to the evolution, Swellow. Swellow migrates to the Sinnoh region, being found on Route 213, and the Unova region, being found on Route 13 and in the Giant Chasm. On Sinnoh's Route 213, Swellow likely flies around at high speeds, feeding on the usual cast of bug types like Weedle, Silcoon, Cascoon, Burmy, Combee, and even much larger species like Heracross. When bugs aren't enough, Swellow likely feeds on things like Magikarp or Remoraid, also taking down the occasional Shellos or Cherubi when it needs other nutrients. In Unova's Route 13, Swellow probably has a mostly water-type diet, persisting almost entirely on Basculin, Shelder, and Luvdisc. In the Giant Chasm, it can only be found in the area outside the cave, and probably has to resort to things like Clefairy or Clefable or other similarly sized species. In both of these locations, there's no other bird Pokemon that is even nearly fast enough to cause any kind of competition for Swellow when hunting. Since we're talking about location, let's also dive briefly into nesting. Now, in real life, the barn swallow used to nest in caves, and in some places, like the Channel Islands off the coast of California, they still do. But as we've mentioned, barn swallows tend to make their nests in man-made structures, like barns or bridges. When selecting a nesting habitat, the food is obviously a very large consideration, but another big thing to consider is building materials. Barn swallows make their cup-shaped nests out of mud, so they need to be somewhere where there's a lot of water. They're often found in fields and farmlands and riverbanks where there's enough regular water to have enough mud for their nests. During the breeding season, which is May through August, you can often find them near puddles, gathering up mud and grass for their little homes. So, how does this translate to the games? Well, for one thing, Taillow learns the move Mudslap, which might be in reference to how the barn swallow picks up and collects mud for its nest. Moreover, in their native region of Hoenn, we've already gone over how they're found on routes 104 and 115, which both have either lakes or rivers nearby, which provide an ample source of water and mud to make their nests out of. They're also found in the Petalburg Woods, which I have to imagine has some sort of lake or water supply nearby, even if it's not accessible to players. And then on Route 116, where there are multiple caves to make their nests in. In the Johto region, they're found in Cherry Grove City, which, as I mentioned, is right on the coast. Route 8 in the Kalos region is also right on the coast. As for Swellow, Route 213 in Sinnoh, and then Route 13 and the Giant Chasm in Unova also have ample sources of water nearby. All of these locations seem to provide Taillow and Swellow with ample resources to build a nest. With the feeding habits, nesting habitat, and Pokedex entries covered, I think we have enough information to come to a conclusion. So now's the time where we pull all of this information together into a short, concrete idea of Taillow's ecology. In its home region of Hoenn, Taillow hunts bug Pokemon in areas with enough water to make nests out of, competing with other bird Pokemon for resources. When they eventually evolve into Swellow, they migrate to Route 115, where there's a greater abundance of larger prey to feed on, and also to help young Taillow feed. When migrating to other regions, Taillow are just able to make it to the coastline before they have to set up their nests, while Swellow are strong enough to fly deeper into the region, setting up their nests on interior routes. Swellow has very little competition when it comes to hunting for prey, and likely can feed on any medium-sized or smaller Pokemon in the immediate area. Thus, the only restricting factors are anything that might view Swellow as prey, and also finding an area with enough water to suitably make a mud nest out of. With extremely high speed and predatory traits, Taillow is a fast and fearsome resident of the Hoenn region. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video has taught you a little bit more about Taillow and given you a greater appreciation for the amazing real-world species that inspire our favorite game. If you've got a Pokemon you'd like me to cover the ecology of next, I hope you'll leave a comment, and I'll see you next time on The Pokecologist.